What if global peacemaking wasn't about endless bogged-down negotiations, but about direct, top-level deal-making instead? Today we're breaking down a pretty provocative opinion piece that proposes just that. It's a radical new foreign policy idea that really aims to flip decades of diplomatic tradition on its head. Let's get into it.
At the very heart of the article we're looking at today is this one. Really powerful question. You know, in an age where it feels like we're surrounded by endless conflicts, can a completely different kind of global body actually pull off what so many others have failed to do?
So, the answer the article puts forward is this. Well, it's a pretty radical concept, a board of peace. The whole idea is to create a direct alternative to what the author sees as the failing old guard of international diplomacy.
Okay, so what is this board of peace? Well, the article pictures it as this international body that's laser-focused on one thing, mediating conflicts through direct leader-to-leader deal-making, and it proposes Donald Trump as its lifelong chairman.
And the timeline laid out in the article is, wow, it's incredibly ambitious. The plan kicks off in early 2026, starting with a very specific project, Gaza's reconstruction. But by the middle of that same year, its mission would blow up to address disputes all across the globe.
But of course, an idea this disruptive isn't going to go unchallenged, at least according to the author. The piece argues that this new board would immediately run up against two very powerful adversaries. We're talking about forces with a deep, vested interest in keeping the world exactly as it is, in a state of constant conflict.
All right, let's dig into that first obstacle. The article points a finger directly at what it calls the MIC, or the Military-Industrial Complex. It argues that for this group, conflict is, quite literally, big business. Now, just so we're all on the same page, the source defines the MIC as this web of defense companies, their lobbyists, and the policymakers they're connected to. And the core argument here is that this group's financial incentives are tied directly to more war, not to resolving it.
And this isn't some brand new idea, right? The article actually grounds this argument in history, pointing back to President Eisenhower's famous farewell address from 1961. This warning about the unwarranted influence of a massive arms industry is presented as something that's more relevant today than ever before.
And to really get a sense of the scale of this industry, the article gives us one staggering figure. Global defense spending is on track to hit $2.72 trillion in 2024. The author argues that's not just a budget, it's a massive, powerful incentive against peace. The source then zooms in on how concentrated this market is. I mean, look at this chart. Between 2020 and 2024, just the top 3 U.S. defense firms locked down over a third of all Pentagon contracts. That just shows you the immense financial stake a tiny number of companies have in U.S. defense policy. The opinion piece holds up the war in Ukraine as a perfect case study. It argues the conflict has basically created a financial jackpot for the defense industry. You've got billions in military aid and arms contracts just flowing to these companies, directly linking the continuation of the war to their bottom line.
And the author really drives this point home with a striking quote from another report, saying the war has set cash registers ringing for U.S. defense firms. The article's argument is crystal clear. From this perspective, a peaceful resolution would actually be bad for business.
But the mic isn't the only roadblock the article identifies. The second major force that's allegedly standing in the way of peace is a group the author calls the Globalists, who are described as pushing an agenda that goes way beyond national borders.
So it's really important to understand how the source is defining this term. Globalists are described as elites inside bodies like the UN or the World Economic Forum. The article alleges that they use global crises, like wars, to push for these big international solutions that chip away at national sovereignty and move power towards unelected global organizations.
The piece argues that this whole globalist agenda really thrives by taking advantage of a deep split in society. It's about pitting those who favor global integration against those who put national sovereignty first. According to the author, long, drawn-out international conflicts are the perfect tool to fuel this division and push their goals forward.
Okay, so if the military-industrial complex and globalists are the big obstacles, what's the solution? Well, the article lays out a very specific counter-strategy, one designed to push back against both of these forces. First up, to take on the mic, the article describes a hypothetical executive order from January 2026. This order would go right after the alleged profiteering. It would do things like block underperforming companies from doing stock buybacks and tie executive pay directly to how well they're actually performing their mission. The whole point is to shift the focus from Wall Street back to the battlefield. And the Board of Peace's own strategy?
As you can see here, it's fundamentally different. The idea is to cut through all the red tape with direct, practical deals. This means building new coalitions, maybe outside of the usual groups, and proposing pragmatic, if controversial, compromises. It's all in the service of actually ending conflicts, not just managing them.
So, at the end of the day, the article frames this whole initiative as way more than just another committee. It's presented as a fundamental battle over the future of peace itself, and a potential redefinition of the entire global order.
The article wraps up on this really aspirational note, arguing that the true measure of a nation's strength isn't its power to wage war, but its will and its ability to actually achieve a lasting peace.
And hey, just for full transparency, this entire explainer has been a breakdown of the arguments and proposals found in an opinion piece that was published on shastabeacon.com. So all the concepts we've talked about today, they come directly from that source.
So, we'll leave you with the final question this article really makes you ask. Does this vision of direct, pragmatic, personality-driven deal-making represent a real future for how countries deal with each other? Or are the old ways just too entrenched to change? It's definitely a question worth thinking about. Thanks for watching.